all across America and around the world. This is Veterans Radio. This is Veterans Radio.
Good day. I'm Jim Fausone. I'm the officer of the deck today here on Veterans Radio, and thanks for joining us. We've got some interesting stories for you. We always want to remind you you can find more about Veterans Radio at its Facebook site or at the web, veteransradio.org, where we're on the web 24/7. You can find a lot of our podcasts there as well. We post new ones every Tuesday, so you can get a new story, a new interview, something you didn't know before by going to veteransradio.org. And before we get started, we want to thank our sponsors. First up, we want to thank National Veteran Business Development Council, nvbdc.org. It was established to certify both service-disabled and veteran-owned businesses. You'll find out how they can help your business by going to nvbdc.org. We want to thank Legal Help for Veterans. Legal Help for Veterans fights for veterans' disability rights all across the nation. You can reach them at 800-693-4800 or on the web at legalhelpforveterans.com. And finally, PuroClean. PuroClean is the paramedics of property damage. It provides water damage remediation, flood water removal, fire and smoke damage remediation, mold removal, biohazard cleanup. It also has a focus on veteran franchisees. You can learn more about them by going to puroclean.com. We want to welcome into Veterans Radio today Marine T. Shea Johnson. T. Shea, welcome to Veterans Radio.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for having me.
Well, we're glad to talk to a Marine. You went in 1998. You're medically... Well, you got out in 2002. They ultimately gave you a medical. But you went into the Marines right after high school. What was your thinking at that point?
Well, my family raised Beefmaster cattle and orange groves, and my father was tougher than the Marine Corps, so I figured I'd get an easy out if I just joined the Marines. Plus, the ladies liked the outfit, so it was kind of a no-brainer. No, like a lot of us that had joined the military, I think, and sharing stories that I served with, we all came from rural America of us, and, some college options, weren't really for us. And, we wanted to serve our country. I think, I always kind of joke, I think I became a better Marine when I got out than when I was in, because as you get older, you start to appreciate things and look at things a little bit differently. But I definitely wanted to serve my country. I definitely wanted to be a part of the best. I wanted to earn it. That was a big part of it. And I wanted to go off and accomplish great things. And I felt that the Marine Corps would allow me to do that.
Well, amen to that. It's one of those things that we owe the country. And I think as we get older, we realize what we didn't realize when we were in our youth, that this was really, this was a higher calling than I realized. So we recognize that as we get older, I suppose. But you sort of had a twist and turn in your career in the Marines, and that, in that you suffered a significant motorcycle accident that really kind of began changing your life, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I went in. Marine Corps was probably my whole life. I think at the time, if they would have given 20-year contracts, I probably would have signed it. I was really dedicated to being a Marine. I graduated honor grad. I was top of my class. I was meritoriously promoted 3 times by the time I got to the fleet. I was doing really well. I served with 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines as an infantryman, was with them for about a year and a half in 29 Palms, and then had the opportunity to switch over to 1st Reconnaissance Battalion at Camp Margarita and Camp Pendleton. And it was great. As I joined and was a part of Recon, at the time, they were pretty underfunded and attached to Headquarters Battalion. And they were doing kind of an OJT program versus the traditional ARS or BRC programs for the Recon Bubbas. And so we were training with the operators that were already there. It was a very small unit. They were starting to try to rebuild and put it together. And I had a couple of good friends of mine that were State Platoon, were going to be State Platoon snipers from 3-4. So Pendleton had sniper school there. So they just finished up school, and guys I'd served with at 3-4 And I just wrapped up pre-scuba for combat dive that the operators were prepping for. And we finally had a little bit of liberty. And it's funny, as I've talked about this over the years and shared this on the stage as a speaker, and went through this. It always is the word accident, but really it was attempted murder. They were targeting, the gang specifically was targeting members of the military for gang initiation, and I happened to be one of those targets coming off the back of the base. And of course they caught me with a car when I was on a motorcycle, and I caught the corner of a brick house at about 35-40 miles an hour, where it broke all the bones in my upper body. All my ribs had punctured and lacerated all my major organs, and my left bicep was sliced open, and they got out and kicked me and beat me and robbed me. The point was to kill me. They thought I was dead. Of course, because of the gang in the area, nobody would help, so I ended up having to walk 2 blocks to a fire station while I was drowning in my own fluid, taking about 2 full breaths, or a full breath every 2 minutes. And by the time I got there, they had day flighted me and intubated me, and I had flatlined about 3 times, spent probably 6 to 8 months in the hospital learning how to walk, talk, breathe again. And maybe about a year and a half later, let's say maybe about a year later, I was back operational. And then, of course, 9/11 happened. So my unit was deploying, heading out to preparing to head to Hawaii and head over to Afghanistan. And that was my turn of events and experience during that time. And then I got out and moved on.
Well, that's it's almost 23 years later kind of thing, and that's the beauty of time, is so much more goes on in life other than just our service experiences, but our service experiences are foundational, and we're going to kind of come back to that, because T.J. Johnson's not only a Marine, which we've been talking about, he's a business owner, which we want to talk about, but he's also been a motivational speaker, a best-selling author, a life coach. So he's taken his experiences over time and really developed those skills to bring them to other folks. But we really, along the way, you kind of went from this, near-death experience. You have done some physical feats that, make the resume, walking across the country, incredible number of sit-ups, I think, or push-ups, actually. I guess I can't find my notes. What's the motivator for, I got to push myself to my physical limits?
That's survivor's guilt. So, it took me a long time, and it's still a process of working through therapy and truly kind of understanding why I do certain things. I think the best way to explain it is the general public sees that when someone goes through severe PTSD, or a veteran for that matter, a lot of times, as they go into drug and alcohol. And they go down kind of a spiral, and obviously the thoughts of suicide kind of start to come in. For me, to be given a second chance at life, there's a lot of whys, right? So why me? Why now? What's the reason? And I had to dig into that for a long time. And there's a lot of different emotions that kind of play into that, right? Anger, frustration, confusion, sadness, and trying to determine what makes me so valuable, that out of all of the amazing people that I served with that didn't come back, or all the people that, children and families that pass away that don't have that second chance at life, that would give anything to have that second chance at life, why was I coined to that person? And it's a constant evolving understanding of something probably I will never truly understand, because my brain's just too small to try to comprehend it. But ultimately, it comes back to being of service. For someone who gets the blessing to have a second chance at life, I feel that I must serve and pay back my debt, or continue to pay that, I guess, maybe more lease on life, in order to do the right thing. Because I would hate to get to the end, walk up to the pearly gates and, say, hey, well, I give you a second chance at life. What'd you do with it? And I said, well, I squandered it. I drank. I did drugs. I, didn't give back to my community. And I think that would be way too heavy on me. So, more importantly, it's about how can I push myself to limits, because I know the max limit, right? I know what it's like to walk to the other side. So I do know that, what kind of pain you feel is never going to be that pain up until that point. You know how to pull back. So all the things that I've done or continue to do, even though it's a tremendous amount of pain for me, and again, it is my version of trying to overcome certain things and sometimes not always doing well with it. It's my version of that drug or alcohol addiction. It's a way to try to push myself through pain and agony to continue that lease on life, to help and serve other people, to selfishly put myself in a position to be worthy of God's grace.
Well, I talked to a lot of veterans, and that adrenaline rush is a little bit of what you're talking about, and that's why we're buying fast cars and fast motorcycles. We're doing addictive activities almost to a level of whether it's physical activities like you were doing, or some are it's drugs and alcohol. I mean, there's a lot. That's a heavier topic than either you or I can really delve into. But I'm going to bring it back to over these 20 years. You've had highs and lows. You were, as I say, a best-selling author. You ran a CEO of a prosperous mortgage business that collapsed under the economy. That led to homelessness. That led to starting over again, and being resilient. But somewhere along the way, you got this serial entrepreneur bug. There was something in it about starting and running businesses. What's your personal philosophy about that?
I think it's plays along of what you mentioned, just chasing a high. I mean, developing a business is, for one, I think the freedom of being able to make your own decisions, getting out underneath Big Brother is a big part of it. The ability to be able to have a vision and a dream. I think the military plays a great structure in some things, and there are tools out of that toolbox that you can grab and use every once in a while. I do not think that a lot of times a great entrepreneur is a great military person, because it's kind of it's the difference between the two. You've got structure and discipline, and you have that in entrepreneurship, but you have to have the willingness to kind of go outside of the box. And I will say, I think maybe it does play a little bit along the Marine Corps, working a little, making a lot out of it and taking risks, on your own, and going out and trying to take a underfunded small unit and accomplish great big things. And I kind of feel like in a nutshell, that's what entrepreneurship is. But for me, I just enjoyed the ability to be able to decide my own fate and build my own business. And a very smart man once told me a long time ago that someone paying you a salary is them determining what your worth is. You paying yours and building your business is you knowing what your worth is. I think that just kind of stuck with me at a young age. So I just kind of continued to do that in building businesses.
Well, I want to talk about the one you're involved in now, and we're going to come back maybe and talk a little bit about, if we have time, on what advice you'd give to veterans thinking about going into business. But let's start with Big Guns Coffee, which you started, kind of launched it with your then 6-year-old daughter, Charlie, in 2021, just coming kind of out of COVID. Tell us about Big Guns Coffee.
Yeah, well, so for one, it's not my business, and be very clear, it is my daughter's business.
Okay.
Just in case she's listening to this, I don't want to get fired. I am the co-founder. I'm the one that kind of laid the foundation and the support and used my coaching and experience to help her build it. She is truly not a novelty item. She is the one that sells and gets the relationships and builds the platform. And of course, we do it together. Obviously, there are some legal things that a 10-year-old can't do, but
exactly, they can't sign contracts.
That's right. So, we are partners in that sense, but it was really her idea. And it was a culmination of all those things that we just briefly, kind of skimmed over, at the end, after I'd ran across America. I'd been homeless. I'd been through all these things. I'd done these push-up world records. She actually built the company right after I broke, and attempted the 2 world records of most push-ups in 12 hours and 1 hour. And, and her comment was, Dad, you've done all these things. Not everybody can do what you do, but maybe they can feel like it. And I want to build a business like that. So that's where she came up with Big Guns. So it's not guns shoot, it's guns muscles. So, she wanted people to feel empowered and feel strong. And I just written a book called Done by 230, where I was really trying to focus on how to teach people to be better CEOs and executives of their homes and their business. I didn't like how corporations spent millions and millions of dollars on how to develop relationships with complete strangers. Yet we just assume, and had no real platform to do that with our partners or our children. We just assume because we have children and they're our blood that automatically we can communicate. And when you work in the homeless community and you start to kind of get into the tunnels and Skid Row and you're sleeping in shelters and you start to ask the right questions, one of the biggest things that you'll see is absentee fathers. And I realized the success rate of fixing that on the end was extremely low. But the success rate on starting in the beginning to hope that never to get there was extremely high. And that was kind of my main objective. And I had written that book really focusing on teaching people about that. And then ultimately I came downstairs after I just kind of wrapped it up. And my daughter says, I want to start a business. Just like any kid would say, I want to do dance, gymnastics. I want to ride a pony. She says, I want to do something like that, Dad. I want to make an impact. And I said, well, if you do this, you have to do it. I can't just go do it for you and then put you up in a shiny little pedestal and say you're doing this. You've really got to put that work in. And as they say, 30 minutes later, she developed Big Guns coffee with a coffee cup, little muscle arms on it. And she says, I want people to, coffee is the first part of people's day and it makes them feel great. And I want them to feel that same way. And that's how Big Guns coffee started.
Do I hear a little bit of your hard as nails father advice trickling through to your daughter when you say if you're going to start something, you got to follow it through?
Well, absolutely. I think that's probably more love than it is hard as nails
It
because,
is, but I bet when you
yeah,
were a kid, you thought it was just hard as nails stuff.
yeah. Well, my dad never started a business with me, so he just made me swallow my teeth if I said anything out back. So, um, I, look, having a daughter is different than having a boy, and having a daughter, you become, again, I can't speak for everyone else. I just speak for myself. For me, it is the most amount of love I've ever experienced in my life. I have never had the feeling of love like I have for my daughter. She's my best friend, my emotional support animal. She's everything to me in this world. And the one thing I have learned in business is that no amount of money can make you successful. It's the value that you create and your ability to understand, connect, communicate, and sell to people and serve people is where that monetary gain is in exchange. And what we're doing is laying that foundation for her. She can do whatever she wants when she grows up. I don't care if she wants to be an artist, she wants to do all these things. But as a father and a coach, if I coach her on the foundation of things that are, a dying, there's dying right now, right? Which is looking someone in the eye, shaking their hand, communicate, being able to work a room, feel confident, not have fear, based on other people. It'll allow her to pick and choose her career. If it happens to be the coffee business and she builds her company, great. If she happens to take it and go be a teacher, that's great too. But more importantly, it's about teaching her the foundation of the skills that we unfortunately won't learn until later on in life.
Yeah, those life skills are not taught in the classroom, and they're probably more valuable than most of what you get taught in the classroom.
Yes, sir.
And that's part of what you're teaching your daughter through Big Guns Coffee. You've also sort of in the company taken a kind of unique angle, I suppose, in coffee and where you buy it from. Tell us a little bit about that distinguishing feature and why it came about.
Yes, sir. Well, I'll take credit for that one. That is a hydroponic coffee. So we're the first and only indoor hydroponic coffee farm in the United States. As we're starting to learn now that we've really kind of gotten out there, we're the only one in the world. We've been contacted by different countries. We leave for Germany later this year to kind of go talk about what we're doing in coffee in our segment and our focus. And it really just kind of came from a program I went through with Appalachian State University. It's called Frontline to Farm, and it was a program for disabled veterans on learning to understand farming. And during that time when we were doing our coffee, I just wanted to kind of get a little more back to the roots of farming and maybe just live a little bit more lax life in that sense. Not that farming is lax, but just kind of take a different approach to my corporate side of it. And kind of go back to my roots. And I had met a veteran that was growing hydroponic lettuce and was extremely intrigued by hydroponics, very naive to the process. And then I just submersed myself in it and was like, I wonder why we can't do coffee. And when I went to Google it, there was nothing. There was no one's ever done it. There was no real data. There was nothing to research. And I thought, well, either I've stumbled upon something or I'm a complete idiot and I don't see what the problem is. And somehow, lucky for me, I stumbled upon something. And then we started to develop it, and we spent all my savings and money and everything, sold my car. We went all in to develop and build it. And then we started having harvest. We started growing coffee, and then we started putting it together, and that's where we are now, creating the first indoor, hydroponic coffee, American grown, American made coffee with its own independent commodity and supply chain that hopefully will never compete with the overall coffee market, but will create an opportunity to lay the foundation for the future of how coffee may be done. And up until that point, an additional avenue for people to be able to source American products.
So this is intriguing, T. Shane. How long does it take to grow coffee hydroponically?
Well, so It depends on the variety. There's 134 different varieties, and coffee's been around for a long time. And people have been working on innovative ways to make coffee grow faster because it is such a huge product, right? America is the second most drink product in America is coffee, so that's a high demand. And when you have a high demand, you start to put in a lot of money in scientists to try to determine out how to push that demand and create that supply, right? So hydroponics just alone, set aside the factor of whatever the produce is or whatever it is you're growing, has a 50% faster growth rate than traditional grow, and anywhere between 30 to 40% more yield in the produce than a traditional grow. So if you had a variety that was taking 2 years to grow, 3 years to grow, there's a high probability, if you have the right nutrient mix and you know how to do it, that you're going to be able to grow that in half the time, say a year and a half. So that's the part we're working on now, is to scale, and we're creating franchise opportunities for veterans to be able to, start their own farms if they want to. And that allows us to kind of scale and grow and meet that need. But this is substantially more than traditional grow. But again, it's not an apples to apples comparison. It's an apples to oranges comparison as far as the model and what we're
Very,
doing.
very interesting. If people want to know more about Big Guns Coffee, where should they go?
Yes, sir. So it's biggunscoffee.com, and all of our social media is at Big Guns Coffee.
And if they're looking for more information, some of the things you've written, T. Johnson, where should they go?
They would go to tshaneinspires.com, and all social media handles at T. Shane Johnson.
I want to back up, though, because, as a crayon-eating Marine, what the heck? Where did you ever think you had enough experience to run a business, enough financing savvy? Where does that come from?
Well, I think it's kind of an oxymoron of the joke made Marines, right? When it
Right.
comes to the intelligence level. I think there's something to be said about being smart and being tenacious. There's a lot of really smart people that haven't done anything. There's a lot of really people that aren't that smart that have accomplished a lot. And I think that comes down to the basis of the never quit mentality of being a Marine, no matter what it is. I mean, we are the only branch that's, won every single battle. We are winners as a whole. We are tenacious. We are trained to continue to advance forward and to never quit. And I do think that if you can take those principles in life and you can apply those to entrepreneurship or relationships, or anything that you do, no matter what, the guy that continues to fight is the one that continues to win. I think Bella Wood proved that, very well, in the sense that you can do a few people with a tenacious appetite to completely dominate, can accomplish that. And I think that's something that's extremely important, that, from a takeaway standpoint, is for people to remember that you just got to keep going. Life is life, and at the end, everything will be okay. I have that competitive advantage knowing that on the other side, there is something there. So make the best of what that is. This is today. Fight through it, continue to push forward, advance, and just make sure you got a great target and head towards that target.
Well, perseverance really is everything, and in business you have to hang in there, right? Through the ups and the downs and the economy and the interest rates and now tariffs and COVID. But in business, it is about persevering and time being on your side if you stay in the fight. As you get a chance to talk to a lot of veterans, what advice do you give them about finding, and these are different issues, right? Finding happiness, finding success, starting a business. Pick any of those you'd like to close out on, and what advice would you give veterans?
I would say pick your lane. I think, look, the reality of it, life is I stay in a fight because I have a daughter. If I didn't have my daughter, I probably wouldn't be in the fight. And I say that in the sense that I would not tenaciously be out trying to build my own business by myself. I think most of us that have served are service-based people, and we have to have people to serve for, and that gives us a mission objective. And I think happiness is something that you have to take time to really work on yourself, and that's a hard thing to do for someone who's service-based, because their fulfillment comes from helping others, and it's really hard to be of service to yourself. And I think that's probably the most challenging thing you could ever do. And I think that you have to make a decision on which one you want. So when you find happiness, you have to learn to serve yourself first. in order to serve anyone for that matter, or to continue to live a happy, full life. As far as starting a business is concerned, there's a difference between being an entrepreneur and a wantrepreneur. Make your decision on what you want to be, because there is no fun. It is not fun. It's not exciting. There's minimal highs compared to the lows. It is complete 100% challenge. You want to quit every day. There's failures all the time. So make sure you have a clear, defined plan and objective of why you're doing a business. I think most people do it with the intentions of thinking they're going to stay in it forever because it's a passion. Build an exit, build a strategy to get away with it. Just shorten that time and hopefully build something that creates a service to people, but hopefully a monetary exchange that allows you to live a life of at least financial freedom.
Well, T.J. Johnson, you are certainly a good number one employee for Charlie. And we wish you, her, and Big Guns Coffee nothing but the best, and we thank you for spending a little time with Veterans Radio today.
Yes, sir. It was my pleasure, and thank you so much for allowing us the opportunity to share our story on your platform.
We just want to remind you that Veterans Radio podcasts are available on all your favorite streaming platforms, including RSS.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Rees Across America Radio. So wherever you are, you can find us, whether it's on your mobile phone or your computer or your laptop, your tablet. But listen in to Veterans Radio Podcasts. We post something new every week, and you're going to find it informative. And I want to thank everybody for listening to Veterans Radio today. I am Jim Fausone. It's been a pleasure to be your host. I'm a veterans disability lawyer at Legal Help for Veterans, and you can reach us at 800-693-4800 or legalhelpforveterans.com on the web. You can follow Veterans Radio on Facebook and listen to its podcasts and internet radio shows by visiting us at veteransradio.org. That's veteransradio.org. We again want to thank our national sponsors, the National Veterans Business Development Council, nvbdc.org, Legal Help for Veterans, a veterans disability law firm with a national practice before the VA, can help you on your claims and your appeals. It can be reached at legalhelpforveterans.com or 1-800-693-4800. And PuroClean, a leader in property emergency services. It's the paramedics of property damage, providing water damage remediation, flood water removal, fire and smoke damage remediation, mold and biohazard cleanups. You can reach them at puroclean.com or 800-775-7876. We also want to thank our local sponsors. This would include the Charles S. Kettles chapter of the Vietnam Veterans of America, that's chapter 310, VFW Graf O'Hara Post 423, the American Legion Irwin Preskin Post 46 in Ann Arbor as well, the VA Ann Arbor Healthcare System, and certainly the National Vietnam Veterans of America Association. You can be a sponsor by going to veteransradio.org, clicking on the About Us and our sponsors, and help us out. Keep this program alive for the 21 and 22 years. Keep us going for another 20. Thank you.